Welcome back to the Get a Grip on Life podcast. On today's show is about entrepreneurs. Those are my favorites. I have Sharon Bolt, who is the founder of Good Dogs. And we're going to have a talk about entrepreneurship, training dogs, and a bunch of other stuff. But first, if you want to create your own digital content, go to getagripstudios.com. Check us out there. Welcome to the Get a Grip on Life podcast, Sharon.
Hello, it's nice to be here. Thank you for having me on your show.
No problem. I wanted to ask you about, just because I have a pretty well-trained German Shepherd, okay, for an amateur, okay? And I never had a big dog before, and I was very concerned about having a well-trained big dog because I don't like it when I go over to people's houses and a big dog is out of control and not obedient and sticking its nose in people's crotches and jumping up on people and stuff like that.
Yes.
I found that very intimidating. Before I got the dog, I did a lot of research, and there was two major things, kind of like this treat training and then more of a firmer discipline with, using some force. And I found that trainers were either 100% for treat training and 100% against that other kind, or 100% saying, look, you can't train a big dog without, using some physical force. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it's a really good point and something that comes up in the dog training world all the time. For me, it's about, I focus on training the owner. That's how it works for me, because if you as the owner, if you understand the mind of dogs and get into their mindset, look to see how you can tick their boxes, then it is a different language we're speaking. The dogs are all about non-verbal communication and body language. For us, of course, it's different. So it's really going into their minds and into their world. So that's what I focus on, empowering the dog owners how to talk dog. Now, with that, I love to include treats, but there is also that, and I'm definitely not into the forcing and, forcing a dog or hitting a dog or shouting out. You don't need to do that at all. But what you do need to do is have that decisiveness around you. If you look at a group of dogs or dogs in the wild, there is always a leader. So it's really trying to tick those boxes as a leader. So, for example, if you want a dog to do something, of course, you're communicating then in their language and on their terms, but you also do it so that there's no negotiating. It's like, this is what I expect.
Yes.
And I think the biggest problem that we have as humans is that we love our dogs. Of course, we love our dogs, and I've trained the top CEOs of companies and majorly strong and important people. And then when it comes to their dogs, they become all goo-goo gaga and they have no leadership qualities any longer.
Interesting.
And, dogs require us to have that leadership and those skills as well. But as I say, not as shouting, forcing. It's just a case of no means no. There's no negotiating, no means no, and they know where you are with them then, and they love it. They love to know where they are within the pecking order and the pack.
When you're training a dog and you have, like they say, you can't teach an old dog new tricks, is that true, or can you train an older dog?
Absolutely, you can, because you see, the great thing is that dogs live in the moment. So if you then start to give them the right information, the right communication, what they're looking for, then they're living now. Yes, they do associate from the past. So, for example, if they've been hit by, I don't know, they've associated that a certain person or something in a situation has created fear with them. Yes, they do associate in that way, but they don't sit there like us and think, well, do you know what, yesterday that was okay and I did that and I got a treat for that. They don't do that. They live right now. So if you give them the right information and communication now, that's what they respond to.
It's interesting. I think you're right about the alpha. I think I go over to some people's houses and their dogs are the alpha dog in the house, actually. That's the problem.
Yeah. And it's because we love our dogs. It's because we then become, it's just bizarre. It's I say, when I've worked with and sorted out these dogs that are unruly, and they're the top CEOs, they're the leadership people in their company. They've got all the right contributions to give, where they're not too strict. They've got that softness and that love inside too. But for some reason, they just elevate the dog into the leadership position, and then they wonder why their dog takes no notice of them and is just unruly and stressed out.
Another thing too, I find a lot of people, some of their dogs are in a house for too long during the day. Like they're just inside too long. It's like
Yes.
people that have long, hard jobs, they're working careers, they're working 12-hour days, and they're coming home they're exhausted, and the dog's a little bit crazy from being inside all day.
Yeah. Yeah, it's absolutely true, isn't it?
Yeah.
And also, it's a case where dogs aren't walked even before the owners go to work. So of course they are just bored, and it's like leaving a young toddler alone at home, where they're just going to create havoc because they've got all this energy that they want to just let out. And yes, to be cooped up in an environment for long periods at a time it just doesn't work. And this is why I say, to employ the services of a dog walker, and they're not hugely expensive, but round about lunchtime, get the dog walker to come in, or a neighbour or a family member. 3, 4 maximum, absolutely maximum 5 hours, but it will be dependent on how young the dog is, how big the dog is, and what type of health the dog is in, as to how much exercise that they need.
Sure. So you became a subject matter expert in dog training, but then you kind of parlayed that into a lot of free publicity. And you talked about that in your bio. Tell me a little bit about how you did that in the last 12 years.
Well, what happened is that at the time, I had a business. I was a complementary therapist. So I would work with people who had bad backs, had fear and phobias, fear of public speaking. And then there's the physical things from digestive disorders. And so it went on. And then I got these little puppies, 2 little puppies from the same litter. They were 8 weeks old. And I just thought, we've got double the joy here. But unfortunately, that was not the case, because when I started to contact some of the dog trainers to get them enrolled in puppy socialization classes, they all said to me, "You've taken on the worst case scenario. This is a disaster waiting to happen, because they're blood related. They will do whatever they want. And because they're 2 boys, litter mates, they will fight for the top dog position. And you're very likely going to need to rehome one of them." And I was just, I just couldn't believe it, because I thought, wow, these little bundles of fluff, how can that possibly be? And, to give one of your little puppies up at that stage, it's like choosing between your children. I mean,
Sure.
How could you even begin to do that? So, of course, I was on a mission, and I remember just standing there looking at these little puppies and saying out loud, "You 2 are not going anywhere." And so that was it. And that's when I started to look at the way that they understood what their communication was. I knew it had to be a different way from the conventional dog training methods, because 7 or 8 different dog trainers had told me I was going to I had already set myself up for failure. So I knew it had to be something different from the normal way that people tended to train their dogs. So as it turned out, I was having this great success with my 2 little puppies, and I started to then introduce that to my complementary therapy clients who also had puppies and dogs, and we were all having really good results. And then what happened was, and I remember it clearly, it was 2007, and I found myself sitting on the couch of I was waiting to be interviewed as a dog training expert on a national radio station in the UK, when I had no previous media experience and I had no dog training business. So I had no followers. I had no website. I
Sure.
had nothing, but I had a dream. I had a dream. I wanted to transition from being a complementary therapist to becoming a dog trainer. That's where my passion now was. That's where I felt I could make a difference in the world. And I knew I needed clients. I
Sure.
needed to get well known. And do you know what? I just didn't want to go down the slow route. I didn't want to sit there and wait for years and years and years to be recognized. I felt I was making a difference right now,
Mm.
and I just wanted to go for it. So when I found this opportunity came up, and it was literally, I was listening to a radio station, which, as I say, there was over 6 million listeners.
Mm.
It was a national radio station all over the UK. And they mentioned that the following week they were going to get a dog training expert onto the show. And I sat there and I thought to myself, do you know what? I've got a secret weapon here. I'm not going to be put off about that I've got no experience and that I haven't got a business yet.
Okay.
I just thought to myself, my secret weapon was I had embarked on my own personal journey of clearing out my limiting beliefs and things that were holding me back. And I thought, do you know what? I can do this. I can make a difference. And I want to get on that show.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't happen straight away. I sent off the first email, got nothing back. I sent 3 emails in total. And on the 3rd email, I got a response. I got a call from the researchers and said, well, this sounds really good. And literally it was 2 days after this, I was sitting in this waiting room ready to be interviewed on live national radio with 6 million listeners.
Takes guts.
It was so exciting, though. It was so exciting. But I've got to say to you, my husband, oh my God, he thought I'd gone completely mad, as did a lot of my friends. I mean, my husband, for example, he was pacing up and down the room, sweating profusely, thinking, oh my God, what if she makes a fool of herself? What if it goes dreadfully wrong? But I practice what I preach. I knew I could make a difference. I knew I could have fun. I knew I could give some valuable information, and I saw it as an opportunity to make my mark and transitioning into the career that I dreamt of having. And that's exactly what I did.
Wow, that's a crazy story. It's interesting that, it's interesting how you can, it's like you said, I'm going to take this seriously. In a way, a lot of people would question what you did and say, hey, you shouldn't have done that. You weren't an expert or whatever. But in a sense, like, there's a sense in entrepreneurship that there's going to be a time when you have to be prepared that you may fall on your face, that you may miss the mark. And
Yes.
part of it is having that guts, and you basically put your business on the nose cone of the rocket, and off it took. You didn't fall off.
It was the best thing I ever did. But I had that belief. I mean, that's I think the key thing to say here is because it wasn't a whim. I hadn't just thought, oh, well, I wish I could. I was sure I'd practiced it. I'd practiced in my mind. I knew I could make a difference. I believed what I saw in front of me. I saw how beautiful my dogs were behaving and the results I was having with my clients. So for me, I thought, do you know what? I can do this. I can really do this. And I don't want to wait. I don't want to wait for somebody to validate me or give me permission or give me any type of approval that I could do it. And when this opportunity presented itself, I went for it.
I really applaud you for that, because it takes a lot of guts. A lot of people, I don't think a lot of people realize what it takes to go on a live program and speak about your expertise in something. It's not as easy as everybody thinks. And a lot of experts can't do it very well. I know, because I interviewed them a lot on all sorts of different podcasts. And a lot of people can't speak to their expertise. They can't. They're not good at it in a live format. They want the questions up front. They want to prepare and They want to do this. The problem with that is that it sounds like it's prepared when you do that. You know, and someone's not willing to take a question that comes in from the side. Let me ask you about the PR because it interests me a lot. So this radio show was the first thing you did to get the free PR. How did you
Yes.
then start to grow that? Because it looks like you've been on in a lot of different newspapers, magazines, and stuff like that in your bio. How did you jump from one to the next one?
Well, the fact that, you see, this what was so lovely is because I went big.
Hmm.
You know, I didn't start at the local newspaper, and I'm not saying, you know, if
There's
people
nothing wrong
don't
with that, of
have
course.
that, there's nothing,
Sure.
of course. But I had a dream. I wanted to go big. So the thing was for me is on my marketing and my advertising, then I plastered as featured on BBC Radio 2. So of course that put me in a position
Elite
straight
league.
away where
It's an elite league.
exactly.
Hmm.
Exactly. And of course, you know, you're in Canada, I'm in the UK, but you know who the BBC
Of
are.
course. Yeah, sure.
So of course it was worldwide, it was national. So it was just an area for me to get doors opening straight away.
Sure.
And I played on that, of course. And, you know, whenever I sent out any type of literature, any marketing or anything, that's what I did. But I also went to networking meetings and breakfast meetings and things like that in the early days, because I'm talking, you know, back in 2007, there wasn't the internet and the social media and things like that. There wasn't any of that you could really do. I think the internet actually was starting to come on board.
Sure.
But I didn't know that. At the time, I didn't even have a computer.
You know, the
I
other
knew
thing
nothing.
too about the social networks and all that, they are very crowded right now. There's a lot of people, dog trainers. It's not as easy to build the kind of following as it may have been 5 or 10 years ago. So, and those traditional media like a BBC Radio 2, I know BBC Radio, I know BBC World Service as well. Those things give you a lot of street cred if you can put them beside your name. So good on you for that.
Thank you.
Let me ask you about your book, Successful Women in Business. I'm of two minds on this women thing. You know, I can't
Yes.
write a book, successful white men in business.
I agree
You know,
with you.
there's something with certain categories or identities you're allowed to claim a special
Yeah.
thing to,
Yes.
and other identities you can't. And there's something wrong. Well, what's wrong with you? What are you
I
talking about? White
I
men in
agree.
business. It's like,
I
you know,
agree.
I don't know why that is. And there seems to be like this sense that it's okay to talk about being women in business, and being a woman in business connects us. But it's not
Yes.
okay to say we're men in business and being a man in business connects us.
Yes.
And I just don't think that's. I think there is something about being a man, especially if you're young or you're from a certain area and you want to be around people that are like you. It's helpful to hear their stories and hear about their courage and their journey of entrepreneurship, and how that is very similar to yours. And I think women enjoy it. Why is it that women can write about it but men can't? I'm asking you, and I'm sure you don't know
I
why, but
do. I do. And do you know what? I really agree with you. I agree with everything that you said. And I co-authored the book. So it wasn't me that came up with it.
sure.
I wrote a chapter in it. But funnily enough, I was approached by the publisher, who was a man. and you're absolutely right. It is that there are some openings, and is it fair? No, I don't think it is completely fair. And you're right. If there was a book that said men in business, people would say, well, what's that all about? So I do get that. And I think as a woman, it's a case of there are some extra opportunities, and I hold my hands up. There are some extra opportunities that come our way because of, I think, to be honest, what it is and where it's really originated from is that, in the earlier days where it was very much a man-orientated world, and it was very much that the woman stayed at home and took care of the children. And then, of course, I think as the women started to grow and develop and have their own businesses, they sort of became the underdogs and the ones that people all supported.
Sure.
And I think that's really where it stemmed from.
But let me ask you this. I have a lot of conversations with people like this. I try to resist as many labels as I can. And even in some ways, even my name is kind of too much of a label. Like, what are you? Oh, you're a white Canadian male. Oh, you know me now, do you? You know what I'm all about. And
Yeah.
I don't feel like, I feel like we're already labeled enough. And I like to resist that a little bit. I know that a lot of women seem to embrace that idea of women in business, or maybe, sometimes I've never been the only man in a room. So maybe there's something about that I don't understand. But I always ask all the women or minorities that come on my show, like, why is it like this and why not? And just to kind of unpack it a little bit.
I think what's
Go ahead. Yep.
I think that's what's from my own experience. I mean, for example, in those early days, back in that sort of like 2007, 8 sort of time, when I started to I was invited to go to BNI, which is the breakfast networking meeting. And I turned up and it was very male dominated. I think there was about 40 people there, and I was probably one of about 3 or 4 women. But I found that to be a real advantage because people were very open to me. They were very supportive of me. And then when you sort of like as a woman stand up and tell a story like, well, I dared to get on to BBC Radio 2 when I had no website and I didn't have a business, they're like,
I'm
wow.
laughing because I think it's so audacious, actually. I love it.
And that was the response I got and I get. And I think, and it's just the way it is, isn't it? I think because I'm a woman who's done it, it seems to be even more outlandish than even if it was a man that did it. So it's just the way it is. So I've decided to embrace it.
Sure. Yeah. You know what? There's nothing wrong with that. It's just for me. I'm always curious about that. Every women. So we did a woman in lighting series. I do a lighting podcast. I'm in the lighting business. So we did a women in lighting because it's actually a very male dominated business. Now it's becoming like lighting designers. There's a lot of women, but in the selling of light bulbs, it's mostly men. Even in 2019, it's mostly men that sell light bulbs and lighting equipment. But there is some very powerful women in the business, and we interview them, and they all give the same story as you. Is that there was a sense that yes, I was one of few women, but in a sense, it was an opportunity for them to share their stories and be unique and stand out. It was something that was embraced by the men, not something where they were pushed aside. So I'm glad for that.
I think as well, I remember like in to the PR stuff. I mean, obviously that is very popular for the media, because if you are as a woman fitting light bulbs and being an electrician or doing things like that, of course it's quirky, it's different. But I also see where there's, for example, there are female dominated industries as well, a bit like midwives. I mean, what about a male midwife? And there are those types.
Are there?
Yeah.
I don't know if I could do, nursing. I think it's like, I'll give you an example. Like one industry that you think, so I own an electrical contracting company. Okay. And I think it's kind of silly to go out of our way to get women into the trades, but I think all barriers should be removed. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It does make sense.
Any barriers that are there that, definitely they should be removed. But I don't think we should go out of our way because you're talking 99% male electricians, something ridiculous like that. But I don't think there should be barriers and it is kind of quirky if there's a woman electrician. I've never met one yet, but I'd love to meet one and have them on the show. But
you'd get lots of PR.
Yeah, for sure. But you take policing. So policing was very male dominated, and actually it turns out that policing is majority domestic disputes, and it's actually better to have a woman there out of domestic disputes. So the entrance of women into that profession was very good for that profession and should be encouraged more and more. And so there's areas where nursing's another one, where men entering the field of nursing is very good for nursing. Not that they should, again, all barriers to such things should be removed. But I think there are some things that I don't know about a midwife. Ooh, I always
I
say,
know.
you may have brought up, I always say the most discriminated person in the world is the male massage therapist. But
Oh, yes.
I think it might be the male midwife.
See, so you've learned something today then.
Yeah, I think it might be the male midwife. Because
Yeah.
I don't like to have a male massage therapist, and I know my wife doesn't like to have a male massage therapist,
Hmm.
and that's a personal choice. Um,
Yes.
but that I don't even think that I've ever heard of a male midwife. I got to find one and bring one on the show. Scott,
Oh,
find me a male
wow.
midwife.
Yes.
It's on the
Yeah.
list.
Yes.
I think that would be so much fun because what a unique perspective to come from on that, eh?
Absolutely. And I mean, on that type of thing, of course, the media will be all over it
Oh, for sure.
because it is so different.
Oh, for sure.
And yeah, so it's so there are some industries like that, and that's one that comes to mind for me at the moment.
Sure. Tell me a little bit about your guide, running your own business. How did you decide to create that?
That again, I co-authored,
Okay.
and it was again from the same publisher who was doing the Successful Women in Business as well. And one thing to say about this is, again, back to the PR side, and if anyone's interested in getting some PR, we all know that if you are an author, you are seen as instantly, it's credible, isn't it?
You wrote the book on
You
it.
yeah, you're the expert.
You
You
wrote the book on
you
it.
you you have credibility.
Sure.
But of course, we don't all have time to sit down and write a book. So there are many of these type of publishers that do this type of thing. So for example, in both those books that I'm in, I've written one chapter,
Hmm.
and then I think there's another 7 or 8, 9 people have also written a chapter. So of course that chapter in both those books took me, I don't know, let's say a couple of days. Now I am part of that published book and can get that credibility. So what I'm saying to people is, if you're looking for some type of expert credibility, but of course, like the rest of us, you're busy and you don't have time to consider those types of opportunities, because there's a lot of publishers out there that are doing just that. So, of course, because it's the type of industry, for me to have that be co-authored in that book title, Successful Women in Business, it says what it does on the tin. And that the entrepreneur running your own business, again, it says what it does on the tin. It is the type of thing that it automatically gives me credibility, but I haven't had to spend the time and then find a publisher in order to give me that credibility. So it's just hopefully a tip for people that are listening.
Another tip there too. So I have, I don't know, I call him a messenger from God, but he's an ontological coach. His name is Luke Sellers, and he's been wanting to write a book for a long time. And so I kind of tricked him into coming on my show 7 times. And we did a series called My Journey with Luke Sellers, and he's kind of parlaying that into his book now.
That's
right?
great.
Like being able to unpack yourself, like have someone who's a professional host
Yes.
like myself interview you.
Yes.
And unpack those sections of your book, those chapters of your book one at a time. And then you're kind of, it's kind of like a very formal, recorded, structured brainstorming session for you.
Definitely. And to get those then transcribed and to go
exactly.
through that,
yes,
that, you've done so much of the content. So I think that's another great idea.
Yeah. So, and then you can have someone transcribe it, expand on it, and now you're editing. You're not writing.
Yes, exactly.
Editing is way easier than writing. Yes.
That's right. And one thing that somebody said to me once, which has really stuck in my mind, is that we don't have talker's block, but we have writer's block.
It's true.
So that you've said there is perfect, isn't it? Because that's overcome the writer's block, because, there he is just telling his story and being just really real of what he wants to write about.
Another thing is like the structure. So a lot of people So I'm an English lit. I didn't finish my education, but I read a lot of books. I studied English lit. Actually, I went to the Queen's University of Belfast in the UK for a year as well.
Oh, very good.
Yeah, so I studied. Actually, the UK is the best place to study English literature, in case anyone's wondering. They have a wonderful, they have a wonderful way of doing it. But I read a lot of books, so I understand the structure of books and how books should, how you go about creating that structure. And you can have someone, if you're listening to this and you don't know how to write your book, have someone interview you 10 times, but have them be thinking about the structure of your book. What is it that you actually do?
Yes.
Sometimes as experts, we don't even know where the expertise starts and ends. And it takes someone else to unpack that for us a little bit.
It does. And I also think as entrepreneurs, we seem to think that most people know that. I mean, they wouldn't be interested in me saying that because they know, everyone knows that. And everyone doesn't know that, do they? Sure. And that's why there are experts.
And it's interesting. You're right. There's no talker's block. It's really interesting because in a way, when you're by yourself and you're sitting in front of a pad of paper or in front of a computer screen, bink, all of a sudden all your creativity goes, Yes. And so, yes, being able to talk it up, especially with another entrepreneur or somebody that has experience with business is so valuable. Wow. I love the PR side, though. PR is so valuable. You know what it is? It's interesting.
So much fun.
Yes, I agree with you. I always say that starting my lighting podcast was the greatest heist I ever pulled off. It's a heist. So when it comes to getting your foot in the door with some of these larger, like the channel BBC Radio 2 and these other bigger entities, is it just persistence? Is it you just have to keep trying at it on a regular basis?
Yeah. And the thing is, you see, with PR, you have to be current. It has to be newsworthy and it has to be current. So if we take that example of me getting interviewed on BBC Radio 2, they were looking for somebody. Now, they did mention they were going to get somebody from TV. So I think that they were going to get someone that was very well known. But that takes time, that takes hassle, and they're busy people. So, of course, I got on and I wrote the email and said, here I am. You don't need to worry about finding anybody else. I know, I mean, I didn't say this, but in my email, I made it all about them, what I could tell their listeners, how I could educate, how I could inform, how I could entertain their listeners, because that's what they're looking for.
Sure.
And I never said anything about me. I never said that I don't have a business. And if I had a business, I wouldn't have said that either. They don't care about you. This is the thing, not to take it personally, but they don't care about you. They're caring about you are going to be a good guest for their show and going to be entertaining, informative, and give great content. And that's what they're looking for. Even this national radio station where you think perhaps they've investigated you, they've quizzed you. They did a telephone interview. Of course they did with me. They wanted to make sure I could talk the talk. And of course I was hugely passionate. I'd found something. I was excited about it. I had everything that they were looking for. They never once asked me how long I was in business, how long I'd been doing it, or anything about me personally. And there I was on the show, live.
That's it's what really struck me from what you said there is that you have to be current. You have to. There's something about what you're doing where you have you'll see people that will become very popular for a while, and then they need to. And then this is what I tell my co-hosts on the lighting show. We need to put out another album.
You're right, yes.
You know what I mean? Like you have to recreate yourself. Like if you look at the people that are best able to stay in the news and stay relevant, like a perfect example to me is Madonna. She's constantly reinventing herself. She's the material girl. Then she's into this. And now she's doing something new. And at every phase of her life, she's putting out a new album, in a sense. She's putting out a new self, a new wave. And that's how you stay in the news. And that's how people stay connected to you. Otherwise, guess what? It's old hat. You're right. You have to be current. There has to be something about your message that you're speaking to a truth that other people want to know more about.
Absolutely. And it's got to be relevant to that media outlet as well.
Of course,
So,
yes.
for example, if you was a dentist and you had this wonderfully brilliant whitening treatment that everyone needs to know about, and there is a huge market for that, naturally, if you pitch that to someone who writes about the latest motor cars and that type of thing, it's going to end up in the trash.
Sure.
So you've got to also find the specific journalist who's going to be interested in that
Yes.
story.
Yes.
But look what's in the news. How can you piggyback? It's called newsjacking. How can you piggyback onto what is currently going on in the
love it.
newsjacking?
I love
It's
it.
when you piggyback off what is currently going on in the news and how you can just pitch something that is relative and relates to your business, but it is current now that they're looking for. And naturally, you need to be quick because it news is happening and it's old news quite quickly.
Yes.
So what's current or what are they looking for? And that was the perfect thing for me when I was, doing that with the radio station.
Sure.
But another way to do this, and I love this as well, is that there's certain times they're called evergreen events that happen. So evergreen events are things that happen every single year without fail in your industry.
Sure.
So let's take the dog training business. I've got on national TV a number of times because I pitched the idea about dogs and fireworks and how we can best support our four-legged friends when it's lights, camera, action going off outside. Now, in the UK, we have what's called Bonfire Night. It's November the 5th every single
Guy
year.
Guy Fawkes Day or something?
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
A penny for the old guy.
That's it. You're exactly right.
Yeah.
But it's huge in the UK. It happens.
Sure.
And of course, there's a lot of publicity about it. But as a dog owner, it is a time of fear and dread because you have this quivering dog who's terrified by the loud bangs, by the lights that's flashing. So, of course, I show up and I pitch the idea to the producer that I can give the viewers my top tips of how to best support their four-legged friends when it's all going mad outside. And it's a win-win because they love it. They want to give that type of advice to their viewers. So there are evergreen events just like that in every single industry every year that you can be pitching the media about. It's current.
Yeah, it's funny how similar. So like initially, I wouldn't say the same words, but when I started my lighting show 2.5 years ago, we aimed for an association. We said we want to be the official podcast of this association. And they have an event every year that we would go to and do shows at the event and all that sort of stuff. And then we aimed for sponsors after that, like people that would be interested in paying for our listeners and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, a lot of people, you have to start with a plan. You have to aim for something. So if you're an expert at, dog training, light bulbs, whatever it is, you got to aim for that person that has the ability to kind of give you a stage and give you a platform where you can speak to your message. And if you don't do that, you're not going to have success with it.
Absolutely. And also, I mean, as we're talking about TV, if you have a product or you are in an industry that has something tangible that you can demonstrate something, because bearing in mind, TV is all about visual. I mean, this is lovely because this is visual as well.
Sure.
But very often podcast shows is auditory and it's, it's that type of thing and it's an audio recording. But if you say you're a hairdresser and there's a celebrity that's hit the news who have just come out with this new hairstyle that is the latest trend. If you pitch a morning breakfast TV show saying that you can demonstrate how Joe Blogs or Mrs. Smith at home can sit and do this new hairstyle that's going to make them look just like Beyonce or whoever it may be, Brad Pitt or whatever it is, then you're you're a dream come true to a producer who is thinking, bearing in mind, say there's 3 hours that they've got to give good information and entertainment out every single day, say 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. This is a nightmare for producers and researchers to come up with that amount of quality content from experts that are going to give them that type of information. So if you pitch and say, I'm an expert, naturally you always are the expert. Even when I pitched that Radio 2 show, I told them I was an expert because I believed I was making changes and I was making a difference to the world. And I told them, and I had the gall to say that I was a dog training expert. So you need to claim that. You need to own that when you're pitching the media. This isn't a time to be modest. They want people that are going to say, I'm going to stand up and I'm going to be counted. I've got an opinion and I've got a great message to share with your audience. And you need to get me on your show.
And it's about the audience and helping them.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And
you've got to focus 100%. Your focus is on helping that audience. And you are, by the way, the expert who can do that. And by the way, have these courses, or by the way, have these services that can help the people that want to come looking for you. But it's never about you. It's always about how you can give them and their audience great content.
I don't know if you're going to know this person, but there's one person that played this better than anybody else I've seen in the last 2 years, and that's Jordan B. Peterson. I don't know if you know that guy. Have you heard about his book or anything like that? Oh man, he's gone from zero to being like the world's most popular public intellectual in the matter of 2 years. And you look at what he did, and he makes it seem like he's just, he's a university professor at the University of Toronto in psychology. But really, he's using these techniques brilliantly to pull off a newsjacking strategy, if I might say it. But he needs a new album. He needs to come out with a new album now.
Absolutely. There's lots of new albums that people can have. There's the evergreen content, there's the newsjacking, there's also your business story. See, journalists are professional storytellers. And it's big now, isn't it? We're even talking a lot in marketing about telling stories because we all love stories. So to think about your own personal business story, and get to the point. I talk about how I'm sitting there waiting to be interviewed on a national radio station when I've had no prior media exposure, and I've got no dog training business, which is what I'm about to be interviewed on. So it's not about beating around the bush. It's about getting to the point straight away and getting some drama involved. We all like a little bit of drama and what could have gone wrong. And, I talk about my husband who was pacing up and down and sweating profusely because he was dreading that I'd make a fool of myself. That's come up with your business story that's going to get some attention because the media love that. They love business stories.
The only caveat I would put on this whole thing, and I think what you're saying is absolutely point on. I've learned so much talking to you, and I have idea as you're speaking. I'm writing down ideas of things I'm going to do because I'm learning. But I would tell people as well, just be careful and make sure you want this. Because once you go out there, there's something to being a private person and not being in the media at all. And that is actually very comfortable as well. So especially if you're going to handle a sensitive topic, something that's a little like if you're going to ask people, why can't I have a book about men in business? You might piss people off. So you better be careful and be ready for that.
Absolutely. There's going to be controversy. That there is, and the media like that, and not everyone's going to love you. This is the other thing, This is, when I carry on and I talk about my story about this Radio 2, I walked out there, the researchers said, good job. They really enjoyed it and everything. And I walked out there, I was high-fiving down the streets of London. I was on cloud 9.
Sure.
until later on that evening, a friend rang up and told me how I was being slagged off on a few of the forums. And it's like, oh my God, bang, what happened?
Yeah.
I thought I was having a good time. I thought this was good. And it did really knock me. And I thought, it doesn't feel good to be judged and criticized. And I did some personal, going and thinking and reassessing. And then it took me 2 or 3 days, because I thought, it's just safer to hide away. It's safer to stay under the radar, because then you don't get judged. Then you won't be criticized. And I thought to myself, am I going to let people that don't know me or have any interest about me hold me back? And the fact that not everyone's going to love me, am I going to let that hold me back and squash my dreams? Am I going to really let other people do that? Because the truth is, everyone judges. People are going to judge you even if you don't get media attention. They're going to judge your website. They're going to judge your emails that you write.
But there's something about fame that people really envy. I don't know why, but it's like they would rather you be rich as a pig, and if you're quiet and you don't go talking about it or whatever, they'll leave you alone. But people really don't like, some people are very envious, especially if they think they're the expert and they should be talking, but they don't have the guts or the chutzpah or whatever the word is you want to use to get out and do it. They'll really hate you. And I've seen it with me. Some comments on YouTube, on the YouTube channels, some comments on some articles I've written where just some seething hatred is coming out. And it doesn't make any sense. So I invite them on my show. That's my answer.
You're always going to get the haters, and I have them myself. And you know what? You've just got to rise above it. I don't go looking. I mean, my husband in the early days would Google and look, and I'd say to him, "Please don't. I don't want to know." And I don't want to know. This is the trap. This is the biggest trap that I'm going to tell you now that I've found is, don't wait for people to tell you're doing good, and don't wait for people to tell you you're doing bad. Because the minute that you start looking for people to say, yeah, I love what you do, it's all brilliant that you do, then of course you're looking for that, and then you get one comment that says, what a load of tosh that was. And then suddenly your day is just brought down, and you're thinking, oh my God, what this is all about. 99 good comments, one bad, and suddenly it ruins your day. It's about knowing yourself, trusting yourself. For me, I trust my inner guidance, my inner knowing, and that's how I do it. And I'm not waiting for somebody else to validate me. I said this earlier on.
Validation seeking is a big problem if you want to get into this. Don't get into validation seeking. No, it's not.
Don't let someone else outside of you say, oh,
that's weakness.
I think that would be good.
That's weakness.
And also one thing, and I learned this very much in my complementary therapy days and on my own self-discovery journey, is that when people tell you, so say, for example, when I did the Radio 2 stuff and I did the TV stuff, I was very, very selective of who I tell. Because what they do is, yes, it can trigger some envy and jealousy up, like, well, I want to do that. So they can then project that on you. And also what can happen is they can project on you what it would feel like for them in that situation. So they're like, suddenly all their fears are coming your way. And often it's a sort of like, I mean, I think back to myself in the early days when I did the media interviews, it was a fragile time. You know, if so many people, if I was surrounding myself with people that were telling me, people are going to hate you, people are going to be saying nasty things about you. What if you say something wrong? What if they ask you a question you don't know the answer to? I definitely wouldn't have been sitting here talking to you now, that's for sure. So I think it's be selective of who you tell until you feel quite confident in yourself, where you feel, I mean, people don't say that to me now because obviously they know that, you know, this is a long time now, this is many years. So people just accept that now. but don't wait for others to tell you it's okay, and don't let others project back on you what they would feel and their fears about being in your situation.
Hmm. There's, you know what? It's funny, like doing this podcast and doing these shows and this is going to sound a little bit strange in this context maybe, but it's really opened up the spiritual world to me. Like I
Mm.
see like when you're talking about projection, it's like I had to cleanse myself of these negative emotions or negative spiritual vibes people can give me when you're putting out a Colligan's putting out a podcast, eh? What do you think, you're the Joe Rogan of lighting now? This kind of stuff. And it's like,
Yeah,
I'm good, bro.
yeah,
I don't need that. So I think you're right.
yeah.
I think you need to, I don't know what it is, but you have to be wary of the people that want to get their hooks and hold you back or hold you down in a way.
Yeah.
There's something that
And
people do that.
people will do it. And sometimes, it's understandable, isn't it? If you put yourself in that position, if life is a bit tough for you
Mm,
and you want to go out and make a difference in your life, and then suddenly someone turns up and it all seems to be working out really well from them, it is going to bring some stuff up in you.
mm,
It's just a human reaction. So it's just really, I suppose, understanding that that's their stuff and not your stuff,
sure.
and don't be taking that on.
Yeah, envy's one of those spirits or one of those emotions that I think people really need to listen to. When you're feeling envious, it's your it's the universe telling you that you can be bigger than you are.
Mm,
It's a message of something that
mm,
you're betraying
yeah,
your destiny here. You need to think
mm,
bigger and reach higher because
yeah,
you have
yeah,
a feeling that you should be doing something like that or whatever. And that's an important feeling to listen to, and not
mm,
to use it to go after people, but to listen to it, internalize it, and use it as a motivation to play out in
definitely.
your own destiny.
Yeah, definitely. And it's there for everybody. And I think that is it, isn't it? That using that envy as a springboard
Sure.
to make it better for you, and make what you were envious about it, to have that in your life too.
Yeah, think about why you're envious and then make those changes in your life, because the universe uses your emotions to send you important messages. And if
Mm,
you're not listening, then you're going to get
mm.
just more of those negative emotions in your life. You need to listen to what they're telling you.
Yeah,
So yeah.
definitely.
Sharon, we've spoken for almost an hour, if you can believe
Oh,
it.
wow. Doesn't time fly when you're having fun?
Yeah, for sure. Tell us about a promotion you're running.
Well, at the moment, I'm busy doing. I've come to the stage now where I would like to work with people. So it's a case of, and I mean, I've done my online dog training courses. So there's how to be a dog trainer and dog training courses, and they sell all over the world. So they more or less take care of themselves, and that all works very nicely. I don't offer one-to-one home consultations for dog training nowadays, but I've decided to do, and I'm in the midst of sorting out a program at the moment, which is called a done with you program, rather than, so it's like I'm devising an 8, maybe 9 week program where I'm going to be working directly with an entrepreneur, a business owner, where to get publicity. So there will be modules, and I've recorded them all now, all about finding your niche journalists, how to write the pitch. And of course, there's templates, there's everything that anyone would need. And I just thought, sometimes with an online course, it's a case of, yeah, but I would like someone to read my pitch, or someone who would look at my headlines, and
Hmm.
someone who would say to me, is this the right journalist? And that's what I want to do. So that's what I'm in the process of doing now, and that will be up and running very, very soon.
And where can people find this information on your? Do you have a website?
I do have a website. I've got 2 websites. So the
Okay.
Good Dogs one is good-dogs.co.uk. And for the publicity one, it's getfreepublicitytoday.com. That's all one word, getfreepublicitytoday.com.
Thank you for being a guest on the Get a Grip on Life podcast. If you want some free publicity, check out Sharon Bolt's site. I know I'm going to do it. And if you're looking at making digital media or you want to start your own podcast and it's a lot of work and doing all the AV stuff is a pain in the butt, I know because I did it and it is a pain in the butt. So you can get Scott right in the booth right there to do it for you. Go to getagripstudios.com. You don't even need to be in Toronto. You can be anywhere in the world, just like Sharon and I right now are across the ocean and we're recording right from the virtual studio. So you go to getagripstudios.com. As always, thank you for listening. If you're mowing the lawn right now or you're driving, I'm very grateful to you for listening to this. So like me on Facebook or Twitter or whatever it is. And of course, check out Sharon Bolt's sites as well.